Let's go to the workbook. All right, can y'all see this okay?
Yep.
All right, so SWOT. Again, sounds like only one or two of you have actually done one of these before. So SWOT's pretty straightforward. It stands for strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And when you look at these, as is kind of illustrated here, you can kind of look at these as both being the same sort of analysis, but for internal versus external things. So on the internal side, we've got strengths and weaknesses. So again, let's look at yourself. Your own business practices, those sort of things. And then the external side of things, which would be opportunities and threats, kind of two sides of the same coin. And when you're looking at this, the whole idea here is to uncover things that can be moved essentially from weaknesses or threats into a strength or an opportunity. And there's a few different ways to do that. One thing that always comes to mind for me too is to remember when you're doing an exercise like this, that weaknesses are not necessarily failings, right? So I think some people, if they're not being entirely honest with themselves on this sort of thing, they don't want to put something down because it's something that they think they should be better at. They're like, oh, this really shouldn't be weakness. This really shouldn't be, a threat to me because I should be able to handle this. Get out of that mindset. If you've got any of that limited belief still within you, like try to set that aside, at least for this exercise. Because again, the whole idea here is that this is not a judgment, right? This is just identifying data so that then we can work with it. And we're big proponents, especially of if you've got a strength or you've got an opportunity, double or triple down on that. And then where you've got a weakness, if you're able to correct it and it's something you want to do because it's going to make you feel good to have done that, fantastic. If not, outsource that. And again, spend all that time where it's better spent on the strengths and on those opportunities. So that's kind of the idea behind this, is to start identifying some of those, being honest with yourself about them. And then as you'll see in a few minutes here, we want to take a look at, again, how are the ways that we approach those weaknesses and those threats. And there's a few different places that you can get to them. Biggest thing that you don't want to do is, one, to not be aware of them. You want to know if you have a weakness. You want to know if a threat exists, right? But then also you don't want to ignore it. Now, there are some things that you don't have to overreact to, certainly, but you, again, don't want to just pretend it's not there. You want to be aware so that you can actually use that to properly inform your business, inform your planning, those kind of things. Does that all make sense from that general outlook on those items? Couple nods. All right. Fair enough. So again, as it actually says on here, it's a tool that really just helps you identify these things. And as I mentioned, it's both internal and external, and along with the analysis itself, we're going to both do that internally and externally. So I'll tell you what that means in a second, but let's look at some of their examples for strengths, just again, really make sure we're on the same page. So what are your personal advantages? What advantages does your company, your next professionals have? That also goes for your own team processes, your own individual agent processes, those sort of things. What do you do better than anyone else? What's your unique value? What factors mean that you get the sale or get what you want, the outcome you're looking for, whatever that may be? And what do other people see as your strengths? That's that important part that kind of brings some of those external factors to this. And then again, consider it from your perspective as well as the perspective of people around you, the people you work with, people you serve. And as it says right here, be realistic, right? Be honest with yourself about that. Again, like I said, there's not judgment here. It's just like looking at this as data. And you don't need to share this with anyone too. So, be as honest as you want there. Sticking on the internal side of things, weaknesses. What could you improve? Again, it doesn't have to be a failing. It doesn't have to be something that you constantly beat yourself up about. What could you be better at? The other thing to remember, folks, is that this is all relative, right? Something that you might be horrified about, it's a weakness. You might do so much better than, someone sitting next to you already, right? So again, it's all relative, but if it's something that you feel you could improve, even if you're actually doing it at a pretty good level, go ahead and throw that into weaknesses here. Because again, remember, the idea here is to look at those weaknesses and see how we can improve upon that. So what should you avoid? That's a good way to look at this as well. So, maybe a weakness is not something that you just don't do well. Maybe it's something you just don't do, if there's something in your business or in your life that you're thinking, boy, I should really be doing more of that, but I just never seem to get around to it. Again, maybe if you did it, you would do it very well at a very high level, But if the weakness around it is the fact that you don't seem to be able to carve out the time for it or the motivation to get started or something like that, that counts as a weakness as well. Put that in there. What factors lose you sales? What causes business to go elsewhere? Again, that definitely crosses over into the threats column here from external stuff, but internally as well. An example of that might be that you need to improve, let's say, your ability to identify the personality type at the other side of the table, right? So if you get like a listing appointment, let's say, and you sit down with someone, but there's just, for whatever reason, maybe 10% of people you just cannot make a connection with for some reason. And it feels like you did everything right as far as the presentation, as far as the data, all those kind of things, but you just know the reason it didn't come together is because you didn't have a connection. There's like some kind of awkwardness there, that kind of thing. And, if it's the random one-off here and there, sure, it just is what it is. People are people, right? Humans are complex, confusing creatures. But, if you are seeing more of that, again, maybe that's part of that, is that you need to work on, identifying the way the other person communicates earlier on so that you can adapt and have that better connection, right? That could be something there. And again, consider this from an internal and external basis. What that means, and I'll talk about it here because, again, they're kind of highlighting it too, is that we want to go ahead and go through this SWOT analysis, write all these things down in the 4 quadrants for ourselves. But a key part of this is that we want to do 3 of these in total. So we want to do 1 ourselves, being as honest and open as we can with ourselves and what we put on here. And then we want 2 other people to do this for us. So the best people to look for that are going to be a close friend or family member, someone that knows you really well, but also, you can give them permission to be honest. And again, they don't have to be brutal about it, right? You can let them know the idea here too, which is, what is a weakness I'm looking to improve. And if it's something that, you think could use improving, even if you don't think maybe that I'm going to be able to improve it because it's just not my nature or whatever, I still want to be aware of it. Please tell me. If you can find that person that can be honest with that and give them that permission, that's what you're looking for. So you want to hand them one of these blank sheets and let them do this in relation to you. For the second one, again, it can be just another trusted friend, family member, whatever. But if you've got someone else that you work closely with, so another agent that you know well enough that you'd be okay asking them to do this. And again, it doesn't have to be a close relationship. It just means they're probably not going to be like maybe as brutal or as insightful potentially, but still, it's a valuable perspective to have. If it's someone you've done some cross sales with, someone that maybe you're in a mastermind with in the office here, someone else that's in some of these classes with you, that you've talked to a little bit, those kind of things. As long as you think they might have enough of a feeling to at least give you some insight, that is absolutely still worth doing. So again, we're going to start with this internally today, but a hugely important part of this and for the homework is to actually go out and get 2 other people to do this and give that back to you and then kind of compare and contrast those together. And we'll look at kind of how we do that and how we synthesize all that in a minute as well. Moving to the opportunities column. So again, similar to strengths, but this is again looking at it from external factors. So rather than it's something that you're doing part of your own process, part of your own personality, what's out there in the marketplace? What's out there in the world that is going to be an opportunity for you to jump on? So again, some of the examples they have here: changes in government policy related to your field, changes in social patterns, population, lifestyle changes. That's pretty relevant these days, right? With all of the people doing all that additional work at home, people sometimes moving between cities, but keeping their job, in a different state because they're able to do that now. I mean, that's huge. I know we've been thinking about that a lot recently, but don't stop now, right? A lot of those shifts are still happening, still occurring in various ways. What other interesting trends are you seeing? Part of that too, just within our own market here, is even if someone's not, coming here from a different state, if they're not coming from, let's say Chicago and keeping their salary and their job there, but living here remotely, they may just have a position here where now they can telecommute a few days a week, right? So maybe now distance doesn't matter quite as much to them, and they're actually looking for a better home working environment, even though they're not going to be there full time at home, right? And they don't mind doing a longer commute for a few days. Again, that's a trend, right? Be aware of that. Think about those kind of things. Pull on those threads a little bit as you're talking to your existing client base. Maybe it's been kicking around in the back of their head, but they haven't really pulled a trigger on something like that. So again, those are the kind of things to really think about right now as we're doing this exercise here, and try to identify more of those things a little bit outside the box if you can. So again, changes in technology, local events, all those kind of things.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So if I give this to a friend and they look at this right side, the opportunities and threats external, they're not going to know this. They don't. I don't know if they're gonna be able to answer these questions, like trends and, it's just like different things that they could affect our, business.
And that's totally fine. So if y'all didn't hear Danielle, she was saying, okay, if I give this to a friend that's maybe not in the business, right? They're not necessarily going to be exposed to some of those same sort of things. They might not be able to answer some of those as thoroughly. I say that's perfectly fine. Also, again, if we're talking, momentum stuff, like don't harbor a limited belief on that. That's, I think, one thing that's hugely important and interesting about this exercise is that I agree. I'd think that too for some folks, but it's really fascinating to see someone that's not like as in the trenches as we all are, seeing what they put down there when you encourage them to put that just from their perspective, whatever that may be. Because also, even if they put something down where you're like, that doesn't make any sense, well, okay, pause again and think. This is someone that's potentially a consumer out in that market that does not have the knowledge we have, and this is their impression. That's important information to have. So even if you don't think it's directly relevant, you might find some like little bits of insights there, I wouldn't be a little surprised to see, when we're talking about external threats, right? They might even say something about like, oh, well, like what about like Open Door and stuff? I know you're a realtor and, you sell houses. What about these other companies that are doing that? Even if it's something kind of superficial like that, still interesting to see if that's in their mind, So I just encourage them to kind of think about it, put down whatever they can. And again, remind them like, listen, I'm just trying to gather information, insight, that kind of thing. I'm interested in your impressions, whatever they may be. Yeah, absolutely. Again, as it summarizes here, look at your strengths and ask if those open up any opportunities. Look at your weaknesses and ask yourself if you could open up any opportunities by outsourcing or eliminating them, right? So again, when we're talking about those external opportunities or threats, weaknesses, what obstacles out there in the market you face? What are your competitors doing? That's not just on a grand scale. That is, like, hey, I had 2 listing appointments and this other person from this other company like got both those listings and I didn't. Why was that? Right. And try to unpack that. So again, this can be on a very micro scale. This can be, a little grander scale. In fact, I think it should be both. If you've got anything that comes to mind, you want to put it down there. Are job requirements changing, right? Like, that's obviously there's not like a huge shift in licensing requirements here or anything, but think again about that more holistically. So when we say job requirements, that doesn't just mean to check the box for like legal requirements. That means like, do you need to go out and get some specific designations, let's say? Is there something where, you're really trying to move more into a luxury market if you're not doing that already? Do you need to go out there and do one of the luxury designations? Do you need to get connected with more of those masterminds? things like that. So think about that when we're saying job requirements. We're not talking about just like legal stuff necessarily. We're saying, what do you really need to do, to be effective and to grow in that sort of thing? And in particular with it being, threats, think about, are those things that you're not sure you're going to be able to do? You're not sure you're going to be able to get your hands around. If you can identify any of those, put them on here, because then again, the idea is to look at how do we get past those. And again, could any of your weaknesses over here in the internal column, could any of those actually be more of a threat to your business? Let's get real here for a minute and say, hey, maybe your follow-up just sucks. Right? Like maybe you're great. So like when you pick up the phone and chat with someone, you make a wonderful connection and that kind of thing. And then you're going to pull all this data for them, et cetera. And then life gets going. And like, all of a sudden it's 2 days later and, oh, gee, I didn't send them those comps. Okay, that can be a threat to your business, right? Those people are going to go find their data elsewhere. Again, just one little example there, but again, be honest with yourself about some of those things. If there's something in the weaknesses column over here that's actually going to affect how you're doing business, in whatever way, you may want to have it in both of these columns so you can really address it from both sides. And then part of that too is, again, finances, right? Maybe there's been a change in your own setup there. Perhaps a spouse has been out of work or, those kind of things. Like that can be a threat too. I mean, it can also be something that you can solve with this business, right? But if you have got something that is even short-term, that is even just adding additional stress. So maybe it's financial stress, even though it's not like, oh, gee, we can't pay our mortgage. It's just that, again, it's something that's going to weigh on you and is going to cause a little bit of a challenge and maybe cause you to make some different decisions that you wouldn't have made otherwise. Hey, maybe I'm going to cut a commission a bit more than I would, just really try to get that listing, those kind of things that could then become habits, not good habits. Again, anything like that, put it here. The idea is just really think through these things, put them all out here on paper so that they can actually be addressed. And then again, this is kind of summarizing by saying just that threats are things we should be aware of, but they're not usually things that we have control over. So again, that's the difference between the weaknesses and the threats. The threats are more of those external factors that, we can't just go out and click our fingers and have them go away. We can work on addressing them, whereas weaknesses are tending to be things that we do have control over them. Again, doesn't mean necessarily we're able to fully execute on it, but at least we have the opportunity to. So that's kind of the difference between those. So a lot of explanation around, looking at those kind of things, but does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions on those things as far as the concept for what we're really trying to get down here? All right. So again, this is the blank worksheet that everyone should have somewhere there. If you've got the actual workbook downloaded from one of the previous classes, as you can see, these are fillable. You can click in there, put them in. Otherwise, you can certainly print it out and do it that way. The other thing you can do is if you don't have that handy, if you have a piece of paper and a pencil, you can just make a cross, put these 4 words on it and get going, and then you can formalize it later if you'd like. What I would suggest that you do, though, on this blank sheet is above strengths here, go ahead and write internal, above opportunities here, write external. So you can just kind of, again, remind yourself, what those columns are, what those quadrants are looking at. And again, I'm going to encourage you to actually actively take this time and go through this, but I'm going to jump ahead briefly since it sometimes helps as you're thinking through it. We talked about it a little bit. But once we have those 3 SWOTs or more, again, like maybe you've got a couple people that don't know you super well, but you're curious, feel free. Like in my mind, more data is not a bad thing, right? The biggest thing though is whomever you're asking to do this, make sure they can do it and get it back to you. You don't want to be chasing these down for like a couple weeks if they're super busy, those kind of things. Let them know like, hey, this is part of my business planning process. I'm going deep in this. I'm really looking at getting this done over the next tell them whatever you want, but the next week or whatever it may be, just set an expectation, make sure you get that data back. So you're not, waiting for it that then pauses you. But once you've got those in, we want to take a look at another one of these, same as the others, but this is a master sheet, right? So what you want to go through is compare all those. And again, be honest. If you're looking at something that someone said is a weakness of yours and you're like, no, they're wrong. Okay, well, take a step back. They put it down for a reason, and that probably feels weird and uncomfortable to someone to do for you. So again, if someone puts something down, there's some kind of truth to it. And again, maybe it's just your personal relationship with them. There's something weird, and that's why it's there, and it truly doesn't apply to anything else. Okay, fine, but I'm encouraging you, please, if someone puts something down, think on it for a minute and, see, even if it's just from their perspective, it's the way they're perceiving something and is it something you can improve. So basically synthesize all those together and put everything down. And I would try to take a little bit of time too to rank them. So if there's something that clearly is on all of those SWOTs, just kind of put that towards the top of the list, but try to include everything you can in each of those categories. And that's going to give us our, our set of things to really work with. So once you've got those, what you want to do is take a look and try to pair some of these things together. So what is in the strengths and opportunities columns, and how do they match with things that are in weaknesses and threats columns, right? So you want to look at those things together, and as it suggests here, you want to come with at least 4 strength or opportunity pairings. Get as many as you can, and there might be multiple weaknesses that apply to a specific opportunity or threat, and vice versa, right? So that can happen too. But see if you can stack some of those things together. The idea behind doing that is, of course, if you've got a couple of opportunities out there, but the way you capitalize on those opportunities is by taking care of this weakness or this threat, then you can easily see, okay, which of those has the highest value for me to jump on initially and try to resolve, and try to turn the weakness into that opportunity. Because again, we can only do so much, right? So you have to be able to focus, and that's a really nice way to kind of bring that into light, into focus, to see what you should really be spending that time on. And again, where do you need to potentially seek external help if that's what it takes? So here's the other piece that I mentioned. When you've kind of identified some of those things and you're looking at the weaknesses and threat side, again, more weaknesses, because that tends to be the stuff that we can actually do something about, versus the threats, which are more external and we have to, just kind of work around in our business sometimes. That's why this is specifically focused on the weakness column. As I mentioned, there's a few ways to take care of that. So you can either learn, meaning improve the weakness yourself, get better at it, make it less of a weakness, hopefully turn it into a strength, or you can outsource it. Like I said, when we started talking here, If you've got something that is a strength, triple down on that. If you've got something that's a weakness, handle it or let it go, but get it done somewhere else. Don't just ignore it, right? So again, this is something to look at here. So you want to categorize each of those weaknesses as either something you can learn and get better at and improve, or something you're going to outsource to someone else. And the key question there, and actually it says it right here, is a cost value analysis. Is it more cost effective for me to outsource this task so I can spend more time on my business and on those other strengths I already have, or does it make sense for me to go ahead and do it myself, right? So again, I think that's pretty straightforward when you really think about it in that context. And for some of you that are building teams, right, that's something to think about as well. If you're a team leader, you still need to be a leader, right? You can't just say, like, I don't like doing this, so I'm going to push it off to someone else, because again, you still have to be that leader. You have to set the expectations, make sure that the other person, how they're handling that weakness is a way that makes sense, not just that it's off my plate, so I'm happy and I'm done with it, right? Those kind of things. And, if you're looking at this stuff individually, remember, there's a lot of different ways that you can find outsourcing. Even if it's something where you're not getting your head around, like, well, how would I have someone else help me with that? It's like an integral part of my business, and I'm an independent agent. It's just my own business. Well, believe it or not, there are a lot of ways to approach these things. I mean, like, our field services team can help with some of that stuff. Remember, they're licensed agents. But also, like, we've seen plenty of things in the past where even though there's not like a formal team arrangement, folks will do like different kinds of follow-ups, almost act as like a BA or a listing agent for another person, and just like trade a referral fee back and forth for that help. There's a lot of ways to approach it. So I'm not going to get real deep on that right now. I'm just going to say, even if you're not sure how you would outsource it, be honest. If it's something you don't feel that it's truly going to be time effective, resource effective for you to try to learn and improve yourself, because again, maybe it's just truly, truly, truly not in your nature, there's probably other ways to look at that. And again, that's something that we can all get together about, help you out with. Sarah's always happy to talk about that. Myself, Nate as well. If you've been honest about it and you're just saying, hey, I don't think I'm going to do great on this myself, even if I really try, but I have no idea how I'd get someone else to help, just tell us that. And, we'll let you know and we'll give you a reality check on that. So
what page is that on? I don't have that page.
This page is 27 in the main workbook.
Yeah, I don't have that. It goes right from the SWOT analysis to money from both sheets.
Do you have which workbook are you looking at, Danielle? Is it the RAMP one? Oh, okay, business plan one. Okay, so that is a subset of this.
So you're going to the RAMP then?
So yeah, if you want to have these couple other pages as well that aren't in the general business planning one, which again, you don't have to do it based on this worksheet, but it does kind of help you out. If you go to week one, like day one, the introduction of RAMP in the Workman Success Center, that's the attachment on it, is the RAMP workbook here. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like 31 pages. That one's like a little bit bigger.
Yeah, this is like a partial thing that's like, 78 pages or something. So like, yeah, but those couple pages can be handy. So, all right. So I've chatted a lot through some of that kind of stuff. Hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully we're all in the right mindset here. And again, let's actually spend some time going through that. But before we jump in, any questions about that, how we're looking at that, or any pieces thereof? All right. Well, then again, let's use this time that we've set aside. Let's actually get into it. I'll go ahead and just kind of mute myself here as well, and we can all look at these, work on them. And as you're going through it, if something comes to mind, if you're not quite sure maybe how to phrase something, or maybe, hey, is this really a weakness or is it a threat? It's kind of both. Whatever. Don't get too caught up in stuff like that. Put it where you think it goes. But if you got questions, jump in. And then we're going to spend some time looking at that right now. And then we'll kind of come back together as a group here. And if anyone wants to share something, or if anyone wants to start brainstorming already, we'll spend a little bit of time on doing that. Again, you don't have to do that. If there's something in there that feels a little sensitive, sure, don't share those pieces. But if there's something more general, I'm sure we're all happy to jump in and give whatever insight that we can. So let's take a little time now and get going on this. And let's see what we can identify for ourselves. And let me just jump in and say that I know some folks might go super deep on this and super detailed, depending on how much experience in the business you have and all that. Some of you might just be super fast. I don't want everyone to be sitting here if you feel like you've got enough on there. So once you're kind of wrapped up, you're feeling your good place, maybe just put done in the chat, or pop off mute for a second. Let me know. I don't want to leave us all sitting here if we're all just waiting. All right. How about you, Collins, gentlemen, there at Avondale? You in a good place, or are you still digging deep?
Hey, Mike, sorry about that. Yeah, no, we're in a great spot. Tyrese, you in a good spot?
I'm great.
Great. We're doing awesome. Having some good discussion in here.
Awesome. It's a good place to be. All right.
Working on Danielle's. We're doing each other. So
It's awesome.
All right. Well, I'm going to put you all back up on the main display over here. And then does anyone have anything they want to jump in with in any of those quadrants? Anything that, maybe occurred to you just now as you were actually doing this exercise that hadn't jumped out at you before? Or something you want to talk about a little bit about, like, how do I even get my head around it, that kind of thing. Anyone want to jump in?
I'd like to ask a question to the group, if you don't mind. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I put down as one of my strengths the ability to delegate, but I also put that down as a possible weakness as well. And the reason why I did that is because I feel like in certain areas of my business, I feel like delegation is necessary. And you mentioned it as well on the weakness side, where we talk about whether to learn from it or outsource it, which I think is fantastic. But I'd love to hear from people, especially people who don't have teams or desire to do teams, what aspects of their business that they feel best delegated. And then, what is it strictly based on, what your strengths are versus your weaknesses, or are there just certain things within their business that you feel delegation is necessary because we need to be focused on actually the transaction, buying and selling. So how do people approach delegation when it comes to their business?
Well, I'll jump in real quick here with just a couple general thoughts on that, right? So as I kind of touched on earlier, when you're looking at what you can delegate, make sure, to your point, right, make sure it's something that is reasonable to delegate. Like, you can't just have like a buyer's agent that really enjoys spreadsheets, do your entire financial plan for you, right? And then hope it works out. Clearly there's some things that you need to be involved in, even if you're not 100% doing them, and you can delegate portions of it, but you still have to have appropriate oversight, those kind of things. I think sometimes people get too excited about the fact that they can just push something off their plate versus actually delegating it, right? And there's a difference there too, right? Where it's something you're going to push off, hope someone else handles, and then ignore because you hate it so much. It's not really delegation. That's abdication, all right? So that's something to think about as you're doing that exercise. The other thing to answer that more directly, Will, is that when we're looking at things too, when I'm looking at things personally, sometimes, what you're delegating isn't even things that you're not good at. It's just something that someone's better at, So sometimes it's something where, maybe you're still going to hold on to 20% of the task, for oversight, for inspiration, things like that. But someone else is just more efficient, and sometimes it's, again, that cost benefit analysis. Maybe I can do it better than someone else, but they can get it to 80% of what I can do in half the time because they can be totally focused. Okay, on the whole, that's still a better way to go, right? So those are a lot of the things that we're weighing, of course. But yeah, I'll open it up. Anyone else have ideas on that? Or again, if you've not really done that too much yourself, maybe it's the flip side of that. How have you seen things delegated, or has something been dropped on you that either was a huge win or not because it shouldn't have been delegated? Anything like that you guys want to jump in on?
Can you hear me? Will, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey,
Hi.
Danielle.
Hi, so I am just new to creating a team just this last 6 months, but before that, and I was just an independent agent, I delegated to a transaction coordinator, which I had a hard time letting go of things. But once I had Stephanie do it, it was such a relief, because you don't realize how aggravating chasing the initials on a lead-based pin addendum could be when you're trying to do other bigger things. And so, she charges a set amount. She knows we communicate what I need, what she needs, what she expects from me, and it's just a great relationship. We had to work on it. And so I don't miss handling any of that, the documentation. I don't miss managing my own SkySlope file at all. I don't lose any sleep over it. So that was an easy thing. And another thing that I just recently delegated is I found a good friend of mine. She's 29. She's young and hip, and she does all my social media stuff. And, it's kind of, tough. Every week I have to inspect everything that she's doing because she posts for me on social media. She created an Instagram account for me. She created Twitter, things I never would have done before myself, because that marketing and that old social media stuff always was on the back burner, and it never got done because I was doing other things. So that's also an easy thing. And so she's just constantly thinking of, she's just trendy because she's younger. And so that was not my
Good, thank
my strength. So now she does it.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. So another aspect I'll jump in with too, while we're on the subject, is that again, remember, delegation takes work, right? Like on the whole, it's going to save you time, or it's going to increase efficiency, or things like that. But to get it set up properly, I mean, I love what you just said, Danielle, right? Like it's hard to let go of some of these things sometimes, because again, even if you're entirely competent to like do all of the paperwork,
Right.
is it the highest and best use of your time? Yeah, that is something that can be delegated, and it can happen to still a very high level, but you have to be comfortable with it as well. And that is one of the biggest roadblocks I see with folks when they're trying to figure this part out, is like, what can I delegate? Who can I delegate to? Oftentimes they throw way too many things in the I can't delegate this bucket, because, and it's not because it can't be delegated, it's because they aren't sure how to get to the point where they're comfortable with someone else doing it, right? They're just sure someone else is going to like complete tank it. They're going to like destroy my business if someone else does that and they do it wrong. Well, yeah, that's the whole point. It's the work it takes. And, one thing that I have found that I do, and I try to communicate this then to whomever I'm delegating with, I'm very much one of those people that if it's been something in my wheelhouse for a while, I like to hold on to it, because like I can do it at a very high level, even if I know it's not the best use of my time. But the way I get comfortable is as I'm delegating over to someone else, I work with them through it for a few times until they're getting comfortable. And I continue working with them until I'm also comfortable, but I let them know, right? The expectation, which is, this is going to feel like micromanagement, right? It's going to feel like I'm up in your business on this, this whole time. And it's because I am, right? I am actually micromanaging right now. But the idea behind it is that, once I am comfortable enough that you are comfortable enough and we're on definitely the same page, then I can walk away and not bug you about it again, period, right? So it's like, you're earning the ability to have me not bother you anymore, and usually when you put that kind of thing out there, again, it helps you get comfortable. They don't get annoyed with it, right? And being at that detail level really does help you get on the same page, that kind of thing. So that's been hugely helpful to me, right? The stuff where I'm like, no, I could never give that to someone else. Like, okay, no, I just need to put the effort in and find the person and do those tasks.
You have Alex.
Yes, that's huge. So
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Did you ever think you have somebody else like doing all the website stuff?
yeah, see, that was super helpful, right? Yeah, Daniel was saying, like Alex on some of those things. And again, that's a great example of things that we've delegated different things to different people over time. But sometimes it's also hard to find someone where you're like trying to put everything in a bucket, right? Like, oh, all of these sorts of tasks should go together, so they should all be delegated to the same person. Well, maybe not everything in that bucket hits all of that person's strengths, right? Sometimes you do have to have separation between things that is maybe not 100% efficient if you're looking at it on paper, but as far as actual strengths and weaknesses go, it makes a lot of sense to sometimes divide things that seems like they should be done together. Again, just
Right.
have an open mind about those things.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Well, what else? Anyone else have some general questions, or again, a weakness where you're just like, gee, I know this is an issue, or I know it's a threat, but I have no idea how to approach it, anything like that?
I think one of my weaknesses is just the inexperience, right? But that's why I'm part of a team. So I think that team's going to help me gain the experience that I need.
Absolutely. Well, and honestly, that I think is a really good example, Ray, because that's definitely not a threat; it's a weakness. But again, it's one of those weaknesses. It's not failing; it's just you don't have that experience yet, right? And the solution for that, like you said, get on a team, get with some people that really know that are again willing to share. That's great. Colleen said in the chat here, so right. It takes time and intentionality to bring up a team, and it's so worth it. As Danielle suggested, taking advantage of the opportunity of a transaction coordinator is huge. Totally agree. And for example, with my assistant, she is newer and should tremendously benefit from the Arizona School of Business assistant class. Yes. That starts the next couple of weeks. That's awesome. Colleen also says, one of my biggest weaknesses is time, so leverage is huge. Yep, and I couldn't agree more with actually everything you just typed there, Colleen. Likewise, you know, here in the Workman Success Systems thing, don't forget, we also have the AMP course in here, which is the Administrative Mastery Program. So again, like even you guys as agents doing stuff yourself, or even if you're using a transaction coordinator, things like that, if you're, again, really thinking, how do I delegate some of these things? How do I get efficiencies, whatever? It doesn't hurt to jump in there and look at that, because two things. One, it might just give you some insights on like, oh yeah, I never really thought about, you know, approaching it from that other angle, something like that. So it can help you generally speaking, but also Colleen, you know, if you do have those assistants that are coming on board, you're right, the Arizona School of Business has some good stuff, but we've got that free one as well that is huge for them. Yeah, it's in Workman Success Center. I'll send you a link afterwards here. And also, I'll go ahead and send to everyone here when we're wrapping up the kind of more detailed SWOT pages that are from the RAMP workbook. I sent those to you, Brandy. Hopefully you saw that. So I'll just make sure you've got all those. I mean, again, you can just take a piece of paper and do that. That's fine. But, you know, just for some of those reminders, there are things we talked about. So yeah, great point on that. And again, you're definitely going to get where you need to be. Anyone else got something else to share? Big or small? It's all fine. So let me jump in with this then. Does everyone already know who they're going to ask to do the additional SWOT analyses for them? Do you have that in mind? Someone that's closer to you personally, maybe someone that's on the business side as well, or again, doesn't have to be, but a mix is nice. Yeah, I saw a little humming there from Brandy, but you know enough people, you can make it work. All right, so I'll just give you those couple of pointers there. Like I said, you know, if you're spreading around, even if it's like someone that you don't know super well, set the expectation, right? If it's someone that you think you at least know well enough, or at least they're a nice enough person, right, that you think you can ask them and they won't be like totally weirded out, that's fine. You can do that too. And again, set the expectation like, listen, I know we don't know each other super well. We haven't worked together a lot, but you know, I'm just wondering, just from the basic stuff, the basic impressions you have, that would still be valuable for me to see. Like, be as honest as you want here. And again, it might be very superficial. Still doesn't hurt. I wouldn't use that as like one of only two, but maybe you sprinkle a couple of those out, right? If you're just not quite sure who you can ask, that is still valuable as well. You know, like we talked about with Danielle a little bit before, if it's someone that's not in the business, still, I think it's hugely valuable to see what are their impressions essentially as a consumer. You know, what are they seeing out there in the market? That's still huge. So think about that as well. You know, on the personal side, okay, if you don't have a lot of people that you can directly ask that are going to go super deep, well, go a little bit wider and just see what you get there too. And again, I'm sure any of us are willing, but you know, yeah, same deal. If we haven't spent too much time together in the masterminds or whatever, you know. And here's the other thing. I know it's kind of meta, right? It's a little inception thing almost. But if one of your weaknesses is you're not sure who else can give you a good SWOT analysis, put it down on there, right? And then develop that. I know that sounds almost corny, but honestly, if right now you're having any thoughts about, I'm not really sure who else can give me this information, that really is a weakness. That's also potentially a threat, right? Because if you don't know what you don't know, then you can't work on it, right? I mean, I think that's fair to say. I think we'd all agree to that. So then proactively put that on there in the weakness column, because you can handle it, right? It is something you have control over, and look at how do you get into that. You know, maybe that is, you know, being in person or in Zoom on more of these meetings, just so you start seeing more of those faces regularly. Maybe it is jumping directly into our own masterminds, or, you know, something else with one of the associations, things like that. And just, you know, getting outside of your comfort zone, out of your box a little bit, and making more of those connections, just so you can have someone else you feel more comfortable about asking, right? I mean, again, that's kind of a different thing, but that's exactly what we're talking about with this. Like, think about all those pieces. And the other thing I'll encourage too is, if you're looking at a weakness or a strength or any of those pieces, if you're having any kind of roadblock, you know, maybe add that subsection also to weaknesses as well. Like, why am I having such a hard time figuring out where to go with this, right? And then again, ask. And any of us here are happy to help. So I think that's part of it as well. So I am actually perfectly okay with comfortable silences or uncomfortable silences as we sit here and wait for someone to say something, but it seems like we've kind of said things. So I appreciate you taking the hour here and focusing on some of it. I would encourage you, again, hopefully on your calendars, you had it till 10:30. That's when the class time was too. So we'll kind of wrap up here. Again, if anyone wants to just mastermind with me on anything too, just brainstorm whatever, I'm happy to, just let me know. I'll send you guys the materials, but let's go ahead and take the extra half hour that should be blocked on your calendar here and use that time specifically to ask those people for the SWOT analysis. So if you haven't already like done that via text while we've been sitting here or what have you, I know Danielle, you're doing one for Tyrese, et cetera. That's great. But if you haven't already put that out there, put those requests out right now. Even if it's like, someone's at work and you're like, hey, when you're off today, can you give me a call? I've got a favor to ask you. Just put it in motion right now before you get up and do anything else. Okay. Again, if there's anything at all we can help with, we're always happy to. And thanks so much for joining us today. Okay,
Thank
take
you.
care, everyone. See ya.
Guys, have a great day.
You too. Bye.